Good afternoon, everyone. We'd just like to welcome you to the City and Guilds Construction and BSE T-Level webinar. We still have quite a number of attendees still registering and logging on, so we're going to give it another minute and then we'll make an official start. But thank you very much for attending. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which will be focusing on the T-levels for construction and on-site. I can still see that people are still sort of registering and logging on, but we will make a start if that is okay. First, we would like to thank you all for joining us today. Before we move on, just to explain a few housekeeping. On the platform, there is a sidebar, and within the sidebar, there is an area where you can post questions to us. So periodically throughout the webinar today, we will be taking questions, but keep feeding them into that section, and then we'll visit them accordingly as we're moving through the webinar today. Following the webinar, there will be a recording of it, which you'll be able to access, and you'll get a copy of the slides, including the fact sheets and any questions that may need to be answered later on. So if we can get going with the webinar. This is just a brief agenda of what we're going to cover today in the webinar. We're going to welcome you to the construction and BSE team, and then we're going to look at COVID-19, just touch on that briefly as we move on, and then we will be giving you a brief overview, another introduction into the T-levels, just a bit of a recap because it may be a while since you've attended a webinar, etc. Then we're going to look at the different routes within construction and BSE. Following that, we're then going to give you a progress update with regards to our progress to the milestones which we are working towards with iFit. Then following on from that, we are keen to introduce you to an exciting new venture that we're doing, or relaunch if you like, of our Employer Industry Board, which is going to be a joint venture between construction and BSE. Sorry, I believe there is an issue. Okay, sorry about that. Then we're going to look at some support and guidance, connecting with us, and then we'll have another section for Q&A at the end. I've got my colleagues joining me today. There's myself, Jason Howe, and Rob Malander, and we are the technical advisors for construction and BSE respectively. And we also have joining us today, we have our industry manager for BSE, and he's a lead industry manager, which is Salim Vizram. And then Salim also helps support with construction as well in the absence of a industry manager, which we have a vacancy at present.
Morning,
so those
everyone.
are the three people that are on the webinar today. And periodically throughout the webinar, we'll be sharing, each of us will be presenting as we move along. COVID-19, So we're in the midst of it being in lockdown approximately 9 weeks, 8-9 weeks now. Information with regards to COVID-19 changes daily, and the best place to get the most up-to-date information regarding any of the products, qualifications or services from City and Guilds is via the COVID-19 webpage. And following that, if you still have any further queries, we also have a designated email address for COVID-19 queries, which is product.cs@cityandguilds.com. As centres, you can please feel free to go to your TAs, but probably the most productive way with regards to COVID-related questions is via the website or that email address there. So hopefully that covers any queries or concerns you may have regarding COVID and the situation that we find ourselves in. Just to give a broad overview of T-levels. So obviously it was driven by DFE and IFATE, and it was policy driven through a paper that was produced. And it's one of 3 avenues or pathways that DFE is driving, which is T-levels, apprenticeships, and A-levels. And the T-level is basically a mixture of your academic and your vocational. The key principles was to ensure the skills system responds to the changing labour market. So within our development of the TQ at the minute, we're focusing a lot on engaging with industry, hence the need for the Employer Industry Board, which we've got coming on later on. We're also in partnership with EAL as well in collaboration, so they are supporting us with the development of the TQ and the rollout of the T-levels overall. And I think we may have 1 or 2 colleagues on with us today, and they will attend future webinars as well with City and Guilds. So what does the T-level programme consist of? Basically everything in the black box there is what City and Guilds is producing. So we are looking at the core element of the T-level, and it's got two areas. We've got core 1 and core 2, and then that is assessed by an externally set exam and an employer set project. Alongside that, you have your occupational specialisms. So that is the trade areas. Within construction, it will be carpentry, joinery, bricklaying, plaster and paint. And within BSE, you've got multiple routes: electrical, plumbing, heat and vent, etc. And those are the those are the elements that City and Guilds focus on. With regards to the occupational specialism, that is assessed by a synoptic practical assignment. And within that, the knowledge is assessed within that product as well. Following on from that, you obviously have the other elements of the T-level programme: work placement, maths, English and digital skills, LTP and enrichment tutorials. City and Guilds have also been working with and supporting DFE with regards to the skills cards and getting learners on site and into work placements and into employment or apprenticeships following this. So obviously we realise the situation that we currently find ourselves in with the skills cards, and we're working with various bodies, including CSCS and other BSE bodies, to come up with a card for T-levels and a route for learners to go through. So looking at the technical qualification design, construction to be honest, it's pretty straightforward for construction, craft or on-site. So we have the core component, which is the externally set exam and the employer set project, and that covers everything from building technology, health and safety, science, etc. And then alongside that, the learners will undertake a occupational specialism. So that will include, one of the 4 trades listed there: carpentry, joinery, plastering, bricklaying, or painting and decorating. And on that, the learner will complete both. With the core, it is an exam and an employer set project, and with the occupational specialism, it is a practical assignment with knowledge included. And I'm now going to hand over to Rob, but I think we're also going to check. I am going to hand over to my colleague Rob, who is now going to start and take you through BSE.
Afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to have a quick overview of the BSE specialism, and then after this slide we are just going to break, because we'll have gone through the sort of overall structure. I know it's something a lot of you might have heard before, but we're going to break for a few questions. So just a reminder, as Jason says, there is a question tab on the right hand side of your screen. Feel free to type in any queries, comments, or anything else you wish to get across during the webinar in that tab. So with regards to the building services element of the T-level, we've also got a core component of the T-level. Now, the red and yellow boxes on the top of this slide are now almost one merged product. I'm going to try and sort of explain how the developments have evolved. So we've got the content of the construction core component, the box there in red, which has now been merged with the BSE core component, which was some additional content, if you like, and we've now got a BSE core. So in future, probably at the next milestone, what you'll see is initially these were two products, and now they're going to become one. So we are going to have, if you like, a BSE core unit, which everybody will sit. It's got the, as you would imagine, the core principles and practices of construction in there, the scientific principles, some of the health and safety legislative stuff, and it's the core products which will travel across all the building services occupational specialisms. Some stuff that in there we wouldn't normally expect for, let's say, a core apprenticeship unit almost, because this is designed as well to prepare people not only for apprenticeships as to, you know, higher education, maybe ONC, HNC type pathway, as a lot of us will probably know it at the moment. So yeah, that's the core element of the product. And then highlighted in yellow there, after they've completed the core, they've then got to progress on to the occupational specialisms. Now, the timing of the webinar has not been great, I have to say. We sort of embargoed to sort of discuss some of these developments. So I can sort of tell you what we're looking at the moment, but not necessarily specific outcomes. So at the moment, it's still specified we've got to do 2 occupational specialisms, but we are in discussions and we're taking feedback from relevant parties on whether or not some of these specialisms may need to be a standalone product or may need to be paired together and things like that. So we can't really give any detail around that at the moment, but just to let you know, we are listening to feedback, and that's the reason I wanted to highlight that, sorry, at the moment. People are getting involved. So we've just had week before last, employers on discussions and providers involved in discussions around the content of these various specialisms, and we basically have been taking that feedback on board, taking it back to IFATE, and now we're in discussions on whether, as I said, some of these may change slightly. But at the moment, there's your choice of specialisms: the plumbing, electrotech. I'm not going to read through them all. As you can see, some of them are more mechanical biased. You've got your refrigerant air conditioning, which work well together. The electrical 3, the protection systems, the electronic equipment, and the electrotech engineering, and plumbing, gas, heating, and then we've got heat and vent, if you like, which pair together quite well as well. So at the moment, it'll be a matter of choosing 2 of those, but sort of watch this space on that one. We are in development at the moment. So I'm going to pause and just mute myself for a minute or 2 there. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes, and we're just going to see if anybody's got any comments, questions, concerns. Just drop it there in the questions tab, and we'll highlight that before we move on.
It's also, sorry, Rob, it's also worth, good morning. Yeah, sorry, good afternoon, everyone. It's also worth mentioning that the core components and the occupational specialisms for both on-site and BSE were given to us as outline content by the route panel, by the T-level route panel, and it was then down to us as the awarding organisation to almost amplify that. So the actual core content for both the occupational specialisms and the core components, they were actually handed over to us, which we then had to then amplify.
We've had a couple of questions, Rob, if we want to go through them. So one was about a learner currently entering college on a level 2 program, if they say have the grades of maths and English, Funding says that they must do GCSE. However, T-level say functional skills is okay at level 2 to complete a T-level. Will you be challenging this transition? That transition programs a learner can undertake. Functional skills is on a transition program as their destination will be a T-level. Allow them to do functional skills on transition program and receive funding. I'm not 100% sure what.
I think that's something we can take back, and there is. Thanks for the comments there. I think there is a lot of questions and concerns around the sort of progression routes and funding routes and things like that. So progressing from a various elements of T-level, what will happen with the funding into apprenticeships, and similarly around the maths and English components there. So that's something we'll make a note of. We don't present, profess to be a sort of expert in that field, and as Salim says, a lot of this structure is given to us, but that's a good point. Basically, if they've got to then go and if they're pushing them down the functional skills route as a transition program, we'll have a look at that and we'll take that back. If we haven't quite got your point there, feel free to drop something else in the box there. We've had another comment on there. Feel free to keep dropping them in. We'll get through them though as you're typing. 45 days minimum work placements for my curriculum means 30,500 days placement to find. I know this is not sitting guilds or EL dictating, but volume is unrealistic. Yeah, I mean, again, that side of the delivery element, as you've just stated there in your question, really, is certainly out of our hands with regards to producing that. But that is being trialed at the moment, and things are evolving again, but we're not potentially in a position to feed back where that is at the moment. So that is looking slightly different already. They are looking at some ways of evidencing work experience and work placement without them actually being in the workplace and various things like that, perhaps in the form of projects they can carry out around workplace and workplace activities and things like that. So just to say, it started off a big scary animal. After trials, that's been tailored, if you like, and developed as we speak. And I think we're slightly lucky on that. We're not the first T-level to run, if you like. There's going to probably be a few going down this route before us, although not being a construction and building services environment, we are constantly feeding back on things like that and your concerns around that. So I think we've just got to watch this space of that, but we do realise there is concerns. It's something which raises its head on every discussion topic. There is concerns about getting people actually onto site and the safety issues and implications. And I know, Salim, you've been doing a lot of work with the card scheme providers and things like that to try and support that, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct, Rob. So obviously we know some of the experiences that apprentices have in obtaining their site cards for commercial sites, and that can prove problematic at times, but generally there is a process there. So what we're doing is we are working with DFE. Obviously this is DFE's kind of remit in terms of the work experience element of the T-level, but we also understand that we've got good relationships with the skills card providers, so like CSCS, ECS for electrotechnical, JIB mechanical, BSE for some of the niche areas within building services. So we've actually had a few meetings already together, and to be fair, they've been quite open and warming to the idea of producing some kind of skills card, whether it's a work experience card, which some of them already have in place at the minute. But as the question has already come up to say that 45 days minimum work placement for all of their T-level learners across an academic year would prove quite difficult. So, and I think DFE obviously recognise that as well. So I don't think everybody all of a sudden is going to be required to actually go and work on a commercial site having that skills card is going to be for people that have access to a commercial site. So there are a number of domestic electricians and domestic plumbers and people that just work in the domestic field where the skills card is not necessarily required, but there might be some other forms of means where we could help facilitate that as well. So as Rob said, I think we just need to watch this space. There is this story is evolving on a weekly basis, and we are in constant dialogue with DFE and IFATE around some of the risks to this. So just watch your space, please, and obviously we'll keep you informed as things progress.
Thanks, Salim. I've just got another one on there on electrical, which I'll pick up, and a couple of other specialisms have been mentioned actually. Just stating, you know, if a potential learner wants to be, let's say, an electrician, wants to study electrotech engineering, and they've got to do another specialism, surely that's going to dilute the content to the actual specialism they want to do, and potentially dilute the content that the potential centre is going to be able to teach in the allocated time. You know, for those who've made comment on that, that's the sort of discussions we are having at the moment. And again, I say the timing of the webinar couldn't really be much worse. We've got Milestone 2 coming up, which we're going to go into in a minute, but until things have been decided and official, we can't sort of release any decisions around that. But we are taking those comments on board, and we have been along this journey. I know people have been feeding back that type of thing throughout the sessions we've been having, which we've been bringing in employers, providers. We've been having similar comments. They've all been documented. We've even been recording them on Teams and things like that and sending them to IFATE. So obviously, Salim's sort of said at the outset, they've given us this content. We haven't chose these sort of 2 occupational specialisms. We've been told we've got to develop a technical qualification, and this is the format for it. We're now feeding that back to say, look, our delivery network and our employer network are saying these tweaks may be necessary, and it's up to then that IFATE panel, if they want to then take on board those changes, let's say, then things will move forward and this might look slightly different. So let's park it there for the moment. We'll start and move on. We'll start going through the slides again, but yeah, keep your comments and questions coming. So we'll carry on with that. And where are we at the moment? So let me just get rid of this questions tab so I can see my screen. So Milestone 1, we've gone through that. We've submitted the draft technical qualification content. Some people on the call I know have recognized names, fed back on that type of content, and were involved in various things at that stage. That was sort of way back April 2020. So we were given the content, we amplified it, and we submitted it to IFATE in line with feedback. So we're now in the middle sort of box, if you like, Milestone 2. We've been working constantly with employers, providers. Jason's been taking a lot of the construction on site side of sessions, and myself, Salim, with inputting onto everybody's sessions around employers. We've been getting a lot of feedback. We've been doing things a little bit more tailored to specialisms, and we've been doing things a little bit differently. We've been running smaller teams meetings and things like that to try and let people speak up about their issues with the content and things like that. So that's where we are at the moment. I believe it's June the 2nd. We've now got to submit Milestone 2. So that is, if you like, the second draft with like example assessment material and example assessment structures, things like that. And then that we'll get feedback on that, and then we'll then progress to Milestone 3. So we're going to be going through this later on, but we're constantly looking for feedback on these type of things. And if you provided feedback before and then it's gone quiet, don't think you've done anything wrong or anything, because we have to get so many different people involved. IFATE don't always like us talking to the same employer, provider, and the ones we've got relationship with. They want a varied range of feedback from different people with different thoughts around this. So we're constantly changing the people we're talking to. We're constantly changing the people we're working with, in the hope that we can shape this in line with IFATE's guidelines to get you a fit for purpose product out there when things are finally complete, let's say, and Milestone 3 is submitted and we finally get full submission and IFA off-qual approval. Could we move on? So we've got some future webinars coming up. And as I said, this is invaluable to us. Some of the stuff which has come out of the last Teams meetings we ran, Jason on site and myself, with support of Salim, over the last few weeks, some of the suggestions we've had on there and the improvements we've had on there, you know, just myself or anybody looking at those documents would never have come up with that. We need that experience which we've got from our provider network and our employer network to support us and shape these things into the product we need them to be. So there is some future webinars coming up. There's a link to that on the slide there, to those on the slide there. They'll be similar to this, but there'll also be various smaller sessions, Teams meeting sessions, where we'll be asking you to look at a little bit of content and feedback on that as well. So that's the list of the webinar slide. We'll park that one for there and move on. But if anybody's interested in any support methods we've been talking about today, please drop us a line. Our emails are on the slides and we'll try and get you involved as much as possible. It's invaluable to us, as I said. So now I'm going to pass over to Salim, who's going to talk about a little bit about working with employers and other things we're doing around those topics.
Cheers, Rob. Jason. So basically, is that the slide, Jason, or are you going to move on to the next slide?
Yeah, I think we've more or less covered the content of that and where we are. It might be better just on the kicking off with the employer stuff there, Salim, mate. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, so as Rob just mentioned just now, and what we briefly saw on the agenda, what IFA have basically tasked us with is to ensure that the TQ has full validation, not only from the delivery network and obviously providers like yourselves, but also engagement with our employers. So validation around our assessments, validation around the technical content contained within the occupational specialisms, you know, looking at progression into the respective apprenticeships, if that's what the actual destination is, and just generally feeding back from the employer delivery network, whether that's through the trade associations within the respective occupational specialisms, or obviously specific employers that are wishing to actually get involved. And obviously this slide just shows you know, a picture of Martin, and obviously we've worked closely with CCATF for the last few years in trying to gauge and trying to engage some of their members to be involved with us along this journey in developing this technical qualification, basically. So it's almost a shout out to you, and I'll speak a little bit more about this around the employer panel as well in the next few slides as well. But basically what we're asking for is for yourselves to come onto this journey with us. Obviously you guys are already linked and have a network of employers that you're working with, whether it's through our existing technicals or mainly through the apprenticeships that you're delivering through us. So your employers, we would like them to be involved, even if it's a stage where they can do things remotely, look at some content, validate some content, let us know what they think about you know, the work experience element. How would that be proving a challenge to them? Would they embrace that? So just some of the questions around that. So obviously there is an email address there that they can get involved, and obviously that would be great for them to actually do. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, obviously we have put an employer industry board together. So this is basically employers that have been working with us from the outset. So we've had a number of employers work with us from inception, really. So when we launched this T-level towards the back end of last year, and obviously the official launch that we had a number of employers engage with us and were embracing the fact that they would like to get involved in some shape or form, either through their own membership or through their own individual basis. And it spans across a spectrum. So we've had some micro SMEs being involved. We've had some larger organizations like NG Bailey and Balfour Beatty who have obviously been involved in some of the apprenticeship standards. And obviously some of those larger organizations I mentioned have got, you know, huge footprints in some of the apprenticeship standards for both on-site and of course within BSE. But it's also some of the smaller employers that we want to try and engage with as much as possible. So, you know, they are part of the process. They're able to feed back in terms of not only just T-levels, but going forward, this employer board will be based around apprenticeships. It will be based around, you know, some of the geographical issues that we might have in, you know, hiring apprentices, for instance. You know, what is it we can do to try and promote both the college network providers, but also the employers that sit around those network providers as well. So what is it that we can do in almost that triangle, in that triangle shape, in linking employers, awarding bodies, and obviously the delivery network to make sure that the industry is engaging across all of the vocational kind of trades that we're actually dealing with here. So we have got a number of positive responses to the employer board, and obviously those employers will continue to be part of that process as well going forward beyond T-levels and obviously into the future. So my details are on this slide. I believe this deck of slides is also going to be sent out to you all for all the registered members that registered for this webinar as well. But my details and Jason's details are on there. So if you could, and we would really appreciate you sending out, you know, this particular slide around employer engagement to your employers, that would be fantastic, because at least that way you could get some of your employees engaged as much as we can. So, you know, that would be excellent, fantastic. Next slide, please. Yeah, and these are just some of the employers that have already been involved from the outset. So we've had members from the National Federation of Builders. They've been inputting to a large majority of the on-site TQ. We've had Balfour Beatty, as mentioned, NG Bailey. We've had the Institute of Carpenters. So these are just some of the employers that are already on our board, and some of these employers almost are kind of go-to people when we need something validated, or IFA have come back to us and said, you know, what do you think about these occupational specialism? Can you go and reach out to some of your employers and, you know, feed back into us what their thoughts are? So these, like I said, these are not a definitive list. That list is growing. We'd like more employers, like I said, not just for T-levels, but for future developments as well, you know, and future reviewing our apprenticeships and recruitment. So your thoughts around this, you know, could we do it differently as well? You know, we'd love to hear your feedback as well. I think that was me, Jason. So next slide was supporting you and providers. So I think, as I said, we've got a number of email addresses that you can contact us on around employers. What we've also got is a plethora of information around how to keep in touch with us, what the timelines are, you know, how you can be involved. We've got a number of FAQs around T-levels, what you can do around setting up to become a T-level provider. I know this is primarily for Wave 1 and Wave 2 providers, but you may know some centers that are adjacent to you, that are in your geographical area and are thinking about delivering T-levels in the future, and you can obviously point them into the right direction. We have got a dedicated T-levels web page as well, with all of this information on there. We also send out regular updates in terms of e-bulletins as well. So that e-bulletin captures a lot of information around employer engagement, but it also captures a lot of updated information for providers yourself around timelines, around how to be involved, and around you know, specific information such as you know, sample assessments and things like that. Next slide, please. So again, these are just links to webinars that we've already hosted previously as well. So we've hosted webinars and links around draft documentation. So this gives you an idea of what the technical content for building services and on-site content looks like. So if you haven't seen it already, I'm sure some of you already have, you can click on those links once these slides come across to you, and then you're able to look into the draft content into a little bit more detail. Like I said, there is a short introduction T-level webinar. A lot of that stuff is covered on here, what we've spoken about today, but you can obviously share that with some of your colleagues that were unable to join the webinar today. In addition, we'd also love to hear your feedback in terms of how we're doing things and how things are coming along with the T-level. And again, that link is on this slide as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of connections and our contact details, obviously we've all introduced ourselves to you today. Obviously, my name's Salim Visram. I'm the lead industry manager for building services. I'm also kind of semi-managing construction, as Jason pointed out earlier on today. Rob, who spoke earlier on, Rob is the technical advisor for building services engineering, and Jason, along with two of his other colleagues, is a technical advisor for construction as well. And all of our details are on this particular slide as well, so mobile phone numbers and email addresses. Next slide. Great. Obviously, social media is a key part of what we do as well, none more so than ever at the minute in the current climate. So keeping in contact with us is paramount. You know, making sure you're registered to receive email updates around all the products and services that we're actually doing, around online content, around what we're doing in the future in terms of what we're delivering around products and services. So please make sure you are registered and signed up to receive these email updates. And obviously we post a number of articles on LinkedIn as well, so likewise on Twitter. So if you're following us or if you're not following us, those details are on this slide as well. Yeah, okay, brilliant, thanks. So I think we can pause for a minute now. I think I'll probably hand over to Rob and he can pick up any questions. Rob?
Yeah, we're just going to give it a couple of minutes to see if anybody's got any other questions. I think we've addressed the ones which have come in earlier. One thing I would like any comments though as well in the questions box. We contractually, as part of the IFATE contract, if you like, we've got to put so much contact on with our potential providers, potential centres, delivery network, employers, etc. We want to make that as beneficial as possible. As you see earlier on that slide, we've got webinars planned in already for the various milestones we're going to be delivering. Either on email or you can type stuff in the questions box now if you like. What we would like to hear from you is, you know, what can we put on to make it beneficial for you? You know, what would work for you as an employer, or if you're a centre or a provider, whatever your sort of job role is out there. From today, give us a little bit of feedback. You know, we can then develop what we're putting on for you as potential centres to enable you to keep up to date, and for us to make things beneficial. You know, we don't want to, if you like, put on webinars and not improve your knowledge and potential delivery skills or whatever it may be. What are your concerns for T levels? What do you need as a centre from an awarding organisation to enable you to deliver it effectively? That's the type of thing, really. You know, all the email addresses are on the slides. Let us know either in the chat box now or anything like that, or as a direct email. If we've, you know, give us the ideas of what to put on for support. Would webinars around the specific specialisms be useful when we get closer to the milestones and completion? Do you want to know about assessment material? Do you want to know about maybe structuring curriculum and the limitations around that? Literally anything, really. We're here as centre support, and we want to be able to support centres effectively, and without a little bit of feedback, we struggle to do that. So we can see a couple of questions coming through. We'll just pause for a minute or so while we collate those, and then we'll start addressing them while people are typing things in the box. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we've got a couple of questions actually on structuring the program and GLH and things like that, and the implications on guided learning hours. So at the moment, we've got draft, if you like, guided learning hours on programs. So I'll use building service as an example. You know, we've got, let's call it 500 for the core, 540, something around that, potentially at the moment, and then around about 420 for each specialism. That is making it a 2-year program, obviously, which will be funded accordingly. And then you've got your other bolt-on bits and pieces. You've got your work placement, etc., which takes it up to about 1,800 hours, which is on one of the initial slides. How that looks when we finalise is still unknown, because the implications of this specialisms merging, obviously, if you've got to deliver 2 separate specialisms, let's use plumbing and heating. There's pipework skills in both. If you join them together, you don't need to teach that twice. So the GLH for the joint pathways, if they're 800 separately, it might come down to 600. So we're still evolving along those guided learning hours. We have been receiving feedback on those at various milestones, and that was a big part of the last round of feedback for milestone 2. But then from that feedback, we've got to make sure that things are deliverable, and then that's one of the key outcomes of the last round of meetings was, is it deliverable? Is the technical content at the right level? And that type of thing. So that's the sort of thing we're constantly taking feedback on, and they will then evolve, and that will evolve into maybe different specialisms will have different GLH. How that will affect funding, we're not sure at the moment. It's a bit of an evolving product and an evolving T level. So we will keep you posted and keep on taking feedback along the way. We've had some good suggestions on things that would be useful, sample questions, an idea of what synoptic assignments would look like, an idea of what type of things might, you know, sample evolve tests. Somebody's actually put synoptic assessments have been really useful on the DSP route from Pearson. That's really good feedback. Thanks for that. I'm not going to shout names out, but yeah, that's really useful. If anything like that, which you're getting on obviously the first wave of T levels, drop us a quick note, and if somebody's doing something well, we'll try and mirror it, obviously. We don't want to put our development team's time and effort into something which is not going to be useful for centres. We've also had a couple of comments around sample questions, sample assessments, guidance on the depth and breadth of knowledge required. Yeah, another good point, and I think we are doing some good work on that. I've seen some of the latest drafts from our assessment team where they are giving an overview of what you've got to teach in each topic and things like that to try and identify that depth and breadth of learning required. So yeah, thanks for those. Some really good comments. Few comments coming through around going to be difficult to alter timetables. Yeah, I get that. And then we've had another comment on could be that the total 2-year guided learning hours is close to current tutors contracted 880 hours per year. Obviously that varies from college to college, but that's something which has come up before at other meetings. The actual GLH, obviously, if they're delivering a current diploma, it might be around 450. You know, now we're talking perhaps up to around, as you just commented there, 880, 900 hours per year. How are we going to manage that logistically? It probably is going to be over and above one tutor's guided learning hours for delivery per year. It's going to be a big shift. It's going to be a big shift for us contractually, and curriculum planning is going to look very different. And the new product will evolve, and I suppose it'll settle down eventually. But in comparison to current diplomas and things like that and VRQs, it is going to be a very different animal. But yeah, some good comments. Thanks for those. Let's leave it another minute or two, see if we get any more coming in.
Sorry, I missed that, Rob.
Okay, I'm not sure if we have got a little bit of sound issues. I think things have dried up now. We're not going to drag things on no longer than necessary. Is there any other points from Salim and Jason before we bring things to a close?
Nothing from me, Rob, other than just thanking everybody for their attendance today. I've already received a few emails from some of the attendees around some of the employer engagement, so really appreciate that. So I will be getting back to you all. But yeah, obviously, if you can just let everybody know about the DECA slides and when they'll receive them as well, Rob.
Yeah, great stuff. Anything from you, Jason?
Yeah, just the last thing is, again, just to mirror what Salim and yourself have already said about sort of thanking everyone for the attendance today, but, you know, not to miss any opportunities to engage with us, not just employers, but providers as well. I notice a couple of people on here are already doing that, but again, just to remember as well, following a T-level, you know, it is designed to support learners into employment where they can further develop more training, either via an apprenticeship or other work-related skills, so they ultimately will not be the finished product. And I think that's just worth bearing in mind when we're looking at sort of GLH and how it's going to be delivered over the 2-year period. So again, just for centres to consider that. But thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jason. We have just had one last query, which I'll try and wipe up before we say thanks and bye. Yesterday's T-level newsletter says the draft technical specifications are on the website. Yeah, I think what they're referring to is the outline content and the amplified content. So that link is on one of the slides we've been through today. It's the same link, and when we send those slides out, which I believe we're going to be following up in the the next day or so, bank holiday might give us a little bit of delay depending whether we get to it. But yeah, we'll be following up with the DECA slides. And on those slides, there's a direct link to the technical qualification specifications. And if you want to have a look at those with internal staff and things like that, and if there's any burning issues, or if there's any feedback, or comments, concerns, whatever it may be, that's what we're about. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to shape it into what it works, so how it works for you. So by all means, the email addresses are on the slides as well. Feed that back in, and we'll try and raise it. Okay, I can't see anything else coming in. Just to reiterate, everybody else, whatever everybody said again, thanks for your time again today. Please, any suggestions for future support, dropping them across on email and things like that. And hope you all have a great bank holiday weekend. Stay safe. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.